I've been thinking a little about the differences between the Western cryptocracy and Russian cryptocracy's use of mind control. Indeed, Russian cryptocracies seem to utilize mind control techniques and mechanisms for psychocorrection, i.e., enforcing ideological conformity, whereas the Western cryptocracies seem to enjoy engaging in all sorts of crazy notions of absolute control of the mind of the subject to be utilized as a sex slave or basically for hypno-programmed courier missions or espionage operations against hostile nations. So it's interesting to consider indeed, whereas in Russia, it's solely used to enforce ideological conformity to the state, which is not a positive notion. But in the West, these mind control techniques are used for absolutely crazy reasons, such as hypno-programmed couriers, hypno-programmed assassins, schizophrenic ghosts, mind-controlled sex slaves, etc. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, the British intelligence services, i.e. the cryptocracy, are attempting to create an army of microchipped slaves to be utilized by British intelligence networks. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, the Russian cryptocracy does not trust paranoid schizophrenics, therefore does not bother with them in the same way that the Freemasonic networks of British intelligence do. Indeed, Freemasonic networks of British intelligence seem to be obsessed with paranoid schizophrenics and therefore attempt to sway paranoid schizophrenics into Masonic thinking, which is all very interesting. However, this is not possible because the soul of the paranoid schizophrenic is not naturally inclined towards Freemasonry and Masonic philosophies. So it's all very interesting. Indeed, the British intelligence services are dominated by Royal Arch Freemasons and have been for 500 years. So it's all very interesting to consider the synthesis. As I stated before, the Rosicrucians were created by Elizabethan intelligence as a branch of the British intelligence services, and indeed delineated the interconnectivity between the Rose family of devises, who are the overarching controllers of Walter Rose and Sons Butcher's Shop, and the Rosicrucians, focusing on a figure known as Vincent Melwood Rose, who may or may not be a simulacra, and therefore a cyborg. Indeed, he is one of the Orchids, and the Orchids, coordinated around Project Orchid, are part of a seriously secretive government black ops network, which is focused on the creation of simulacra operatives, attempting to control British minds in an end of days scenario. So it's all very interesting to note the difference between the cryptocracies. Indeed, Walter Bowert referred to the mind-controlled test subject of the Western cryptocracies as the Cryptorian candidate. Indeed, this is true. Indeed, various theories that the Western intelligence services had on Manchurian candidates may have just been a deception to take away the focus on what they, the Western cryptocracies, were attempting to do, especially with schizophrenic test subjects. The Project Aniseed, of which I was a part in 2012 and 2013, focused on the creation of schizophrenic super spies. And indeed, this project, Project Aniseed, was also in motion during the Cold War years of the Roundway experiment and afterwards. Indeed, thousands of schizophrenic super spies operative for the British intelligence services have been programmed at Roundway. So it's all very interesting to note. Indeed, I've stated before that in these psychiatric facilities that I was incarcerated in, I met many British intelligence operatives who did not know they were operative for British intelligence. So it's all very interesting. They had had their brains sucked by a similar device to the brain sucking device that was used on me in September 2021 by operatives of British intelligence connected to Master Mason Samuel Buchan, operative for Ugly Networks, i.e. United Grand Lodge of England networks, therefore the network, in inverted commas as it's termed, which is the chief Masonic Imperial Intelligence Executive. Indeed, the network operates for British Freemasonry in a rather similar way to how the entity operates for the Vatican. So it's all very interesting to note that the network is the equivalent of the entity for British Freemasonry. And indeed, the network exists parallel to, but outside of, MI5 and MI6. Indeed, there are vast databases of intelligence gathered from around the world in vaults at the Quattro Coronati Lodge in London, as well as Grenville Lodge number 1787. Indeed, I was privy to various databases of Grenville Lodge number 1787, including the personal intelligence archives of Charles Stansted, who personally ordered the execution at Grenville Lodge of my girlfriend Catty. Indeed, I have personally seen his archives, which basically delineate that there is a grand Masonic plot to take over the entire United Kingdom in a scheme that would stop Russian elements from having any influence in the British Parliament, and therefore Aryan Temple philosophies could be constructed. Indeed, it's interesting to note that a lot of the focus of the Anglo-German cryptocracy seems to be on the destruction of Russia, as these networks have realized that the Russian population is so paranoid anyway, they cannot be controlled in the same way that Anglo populations potentially can. So it's all very interesting to note. Indeed, the idea is that the Masonic lodges will take over as the overarching spy network of the United Kingdom, i.e. the network will supersede MI5 and MI6. What's interesting about that is the majority of elite operatives of MI5 and MI6 are all Royal Arch Freemasons anyway, and are therefore operatives of the network. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, this network, i.e. the network, coordinates the activities of Troy Southgate, who is the cult leader of a cult known as the National Anarchist Movement, which is actually just the cult of Troy Southgate. And the philosophy of the National Anarchist Movement is Southgateism. Indeed, despite his supposed anarchist tendencies, Troy Southgate is operative for British Freemasonry and is actually a Crown agent, therefore. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, Troy Southgate interconnects to the Cecil family and the Lighthouse Network, who wish to remove chunks of my brain in a lobotomy style process. Indeed, it's all very interesting to consider how all of these networks interlink, and also interlink with US intelligence fraternities such as the Temple of Set, and of course the American lodges of the Ordo Templi Orientis, run by Crowleyites, and various other networks. Indeed, all of these networks are factional and feuding, but they seem to have an overarching interlinking network, i.e. the ultimate intelligence service of the British intelligence services, which is the network, whose headquarters is the Quarto Coronati Lodge in London. So it's interesting to note this is the key research lodge of British Freemasonry, and the underground caverns beneath the Quarto Coronati Lodge contain the archives and scrolls of the network, i.e. the network in inverted commas, which is the chief operative intelligence service of British Freemasonry. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, all of the elite intelligence operatives of British and American intelligence consider themselves Templars. So it's all very interesting to note this overall cross-section regarding the Aryan Templar networks they're attempting to institute certain orders in the United Kingdom in this endgame scenario, which is basically governed by an Anglo-German cryptocracy with Anglo and Anglo-American networks of Templars interlinking with German Templar orders, better known as the Nazis, to institute their hereditary racial caste system and hierarchy over the multitudes, basically. So it's all very interesting indeed. A lot of these networks are very specific about their bloodline descendants and how the occult power is transitioned and passed on through the bloodlines. Indeed, there is a network of the network in inverted commas who somehow believe they control the human reincarnation process. So it's all very interesting to consider this. Indeed, when you are reincarnated, your vessel is chosen for you by Freemasons. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, I believe I may be in my last incarnation. Indeed, it seems that the Freemasons, anyway, have had more than enough of my soul popping up throughout history, causing them problems. So it's all very interesting indeed. In my previous life, I was an operative of the Cosmic Intelligence Services, attempting to burn down a Masonic lodge in Kilmarnock in the 80s. So it's all very interesting indeed. It seems in my past life I was killed by the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry for attempting to set fire to a Masonic lodge in Kilmarnock. So it's all very interesting to consider this, that my soul has continually been popping up throughout history, causing trouble for Freemasonry. So they basically had enough of this cosmic mental patient who keeps reincarnating as cosmic mental patient. So it's very interesting. It seems all throughout history I've reincarnated as cosmic mental patients. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, the network of mental patients that were attempting to expose the Roundway experiment were all closely aligned to me in terms of theories, and indeed the 76 mental patients that were murdered by the population of devisers were all operative for the Cosmic Intelligence Services and had certain paranormal abilities and were able to see through the cracks of reality, and therefore were causing much consternation for devisers' residents because the local felines were very attracted to these 76 mental patients, who interestingly were all male. So it's interesting to consider that there were these 76 guys between 1989 and 2001 who looked and acted remarkably similar to me, and they were all exterminated by devisers' residents. And a lot of this had to do with the fact that the local felines felt an affection for these guys. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, local felines do seem to feel affection for cosmic mental patients, and this annoys the Anglo supposed gangster morons. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, the Cosmic Intelligence Services do not consider themselves British subjects in a traditional sense, indeed. I do not consider myself a subject of the Crown. Therefore, the Crown's supposed control of my soul, which is basically encoded in papal bulls, doesn't apply to me. Indeed, I am an exterior source, and therefore not coordinated in my brain functions by the British Freemasons, despite the amount of programming and Nazi fetishist ideology that the British intelligence services have inculcated me with. I am not controlled by the papal bulls that dictate the operations of British Crown operations. Now, what's interesting about this is that the Pope is actually installed by the Templars. Indeed, the current Pope is from a Swiss intelligence family that were very close to the Dulles family. So it's interesting to consider all this interlinks. Indeed, it seems the network, i.e. the intelligence structure of British Freemasonry, now control the entity through networks of Sabbatean and Bektashi operatives of Turkish heritage who are currently running the entity. Indeed, it seems that the operations of Fethullah Gulen were highly important in this Turkish military intelligence takeover of the entity. So it's all very interesting to consider the activities of Fethullah Gulen surrounding the IG Farben operative Pope John Paul II, who himself was a Sabbatean. So it's all very interesting to note all these synchronicities that occur within the cryptocratic world. So it's all very interesting indeed. I say that a lot, but these theories of mine interest me. So anyone has a problem with me constantly saying it's very interesting to consider can fuck off, because these things are very interesting to consider. And indeed, the whole Devises Please creepypasta is very interesting to consider. Indeed, the thing about this creepypasta is it's based in reality. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, the Devices Police networks are currently headed by Police Superintendent Stephen Nash, who is operative for Mossad at the moment. So it's interesting to consider. Indeed, he is operating for a Sabbatean cell of the Mossad that includes a Green Lane psychiatrist, Dr. Peter Cohen, who I had various trouble with over the past. Indeed, Dr. Peter Cohen believed I was a Russian, interestingly, because of my body language and my attitude. Indeed, Dr. Peter Cohen has informed Green Lane staff that if I'm put back in Green Lane, they must treat me terribly. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, Green Lane is also a home of the False Memory Syndrome Foundation, headed there by Dr. Peter Crofts, who interestingly is a mercenary attached to the Mossad. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, Israeli state intelligence seem to be coming down on me quite heavily at the moment, and do not like me having an interest in intelligent Hebrews, especially not the theories of Itzhak Bentov, which I need to study further before I can really expand upon in my video diary. However, Itzhak Bentov's theory that 20 to 30% of mental patients are of a higher stage of evolution than the remainder of society is the theory that has really captivated me recently, and I can also see that there's a lot in it. Indeed, the Russian mental patients that are kept hidden beneath devices and are used for experimentation and ritually sacrificed by local butchers and police are themselves of this percentage, indeed are specially chosen by the Sabbateans in Russia to be transported to devices for this purpose. Indeed, I've explained a lot about this in previous videos. It seems it's Sabbatean networks running the trafficking scheme of Russian mental patients to devices. So it's all a very strange scenario indeed. At any one time, there could be a couple of thousand Russian mental patients being hidden in the chambers beneath the old Roundway hospital site, i.e. the current site of the Green Lane Psychiatric Facility, Wiltshire Police Headquarters, Waterrose and Sons Butcher Shop, and also various local residences in Devizes, such as the residences owned by the Low Booth family, who are known to be very close to Dr. Peter Cohen, the head shrink of Poppy Ward at Green Lane Psychiatric Facility. So it's all very interesting to know how all of this interconnects with an overarching Sabbatean and Nazi illuminist agenda that is very much detailed in Mossad operations, well, with Mossad being a front for Nazi interests, utilizing Sabbateans who are themselves direct subjects of the British Crown. So it's interesting, we see how all of this interlinks indeed. I'm going to leave it there now.